Well, this is a bad sign. Just saw this on CNBC this morning. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck heading into the holidays per a new report. Well, that's not good, right? And what is the response to that in America, where we are addicted to consumerism? The response to that, according to a new report from Deloitte, is that we're expected to see Black Friday to Cyber Monday sales jump 13% from last year, meaning the spending from Americans is going to jump despite the fact that they're living paycheck to paycheck. But don't worry, they're going to go into less debt than they would have had they waited till after Cyber Monday. Boy, are we broken. Our next guest, Ken Coleman, host of the Ken Coleman Show. He's a Ramsey personality. You hear him 3 to 5 in the afternoons on KCMO Talk Radio. A 2-time best-selling author joins us. Ken, you see that trend, you see that report, and it means you guys are going to be in business for a long time, but what should we actually make of that in the short term?
Well, it means that there's still a lot of pain in this economy to go along with the fact that, millions of Americans don't control their spending. So behavior hasn't changed. The numbers that you and I were in the business of communicating and broadcasting, the numbers we talk about change when people actually change. And I was looking at some numbers this morning. Here's what's going on. So you've got this weird economic situation that we're in where the White House is talking about, well, inflation is cooling. They're talking about this last week. Oh, inflation is cooling. Well, it's actually not. Inflation is at 3.2%, so that's well above the 2% mark that most Fed chairs are trying to maintain. But the American people, Pete, don't want inflation to cool. They actually want deflation. In other words, they want the prices to go back to where they were pre-pandemic. That's where a lot of the pain is. Mm-hmm. And so the cost of living has gone up, and it continues to go up. The numbers of, well, inflation is cooling, no, that's off of the 9% last June. So we still got a very unhealthy economy as it relates to price pressures. And so the American people are coming into holiday season. They didn't plan for it. Credit card debt, all-time high. But they're going, well, I got to buy anyway. So this is a kind of a forced spend that our culture of consumerism has created around Christmas time. And so millennials, by the way, Pete, are the ones that are struggling the most right now with credit card delinquency. So I'm looking at trends like credit card delinquencies, where we're seeing people who have car loans, people who have student loans that have come back online now, and rents are still very, very high. So you look at that right now, and all this sets up for some real pain in this economy, especially if we see job losses and things of that nature that may cycle through in the near future.
Ken Coleman is on KCMO. You bring up some outstanding points as always, and on top of that, not to make it overly political, but when you talk about the pain on the younger end of the spectrum, millennials and the Gen Z, NBC News had this poll yesterday about young voters, and it shows them favoring Donald Trump in a likely matchup with Joe Biden, which just tells me it's not necessarily about either guy or either party, but they have felt an incredible amount of pain, and that's not something we usually see on the lower end of the demographic in the political space. So do you think that's just all about some of what you're talking about here so far this morning?
I do. It reminds me of something that James Carville said years ago. He made it famous. A lot of young people don't know about this line. You're a junkie, so you remember it. But James Carville was talking about Herbert Walker Bush, Georgia. They were in this, kind of intense debate back and forth. And somewhere in the media, Carville goes, "It's the economy, stupid." And he was saying that to the first President Bush. And he was making the point that it's not about foreign affairs. It's not about your ratings over there. It's about the economy, and people vote their pocketbook. And I think this time around, with the data you just shared, I think that shift is a lot of young people who aren't beholden to a party going, it's really hard for me to adult right now. It's really expensive. And I think they're going, all right, maybe we give this other guy a shot. I think Joe is actually starting to his feebleness, not to take a shot at an old man, because I feel horrible for him. But bottom line is, I think young people looking at that guy, who looks like a Roomba, around the living room when he's done with a press conference. I mean, at some point, people are going, Maybe we'll give the other guy a shot.
Yeah.
Strength. In times of instability, strength becomes attractive.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you like Trump or not, he certainly presents as strong.
Yeah, that's well said. Ken Coleman on KCMO. By the way, it is the big guy's 81st birthday today, so take it easy on him. Come on, man. All right, just take it easy. That's all I'm asking. Ken Coleman is on KCMO Talk Radio. So how does this work into the continuing gig economy? You've covered it extensively. We're seeing people pick up second, third jobs. You got people doing two jobs in corporate America. One job doesn't know about the other and vice versa. How does this play into the next 12 months in the job market as you see it, Ken Coleman?
Yeah, well, I think that's going to continue. It's mind-boggling to me how many white-collar jobs, how many white-collar workers have two full-time jobs and companies don't know about it. What a commentary on just horrible leadership that they can't tell that you're cheating on them. It's unbelievable to me. But I do think the gig economy is going to continue to be attractive. Will it be strong? That's a different question. And nobody really knows. But if we see a tightening of the economy, right now it looks like, all the forecasts are maybe no recession in 2024. We'll see. But, Pete, if the economy tightens and you see jobs, a lot of layoffs, you see the amount of jobs being offered tighten, which we're seeing some of that right now, a tightening of the belt on hiring, then the gig economy could contract as well. So what happens when people are relying on that second job or third job and it's not there anymore? That could be really interesting. And so I'm hoping that we don't have a lot of pain in the economy, but at some point, I don't know how else to say it, all that debt has to come home to roost. So when we're talking about average car payment nearing $800 a month, we got student loans back online. Rents are still high. Rents keep going up. They're the one kind of indicator in this marketplace right now that says inflation isn't cooling when it comes to rent. And if you can't afford a mortgage, all you can do is rent. So we have to keep our eye on that. And so I hope there's not going to be a lot of pain for the American people in that area.
And then when you talk about some of the gig economy jobs, the Ubers, the Lyfts, the DoorDashes of the world, people doing them now oftentimes are doing it to supplement the income. If we do see some kind of recession and people go from doing that to supplement to basically trying to replace their income, I mean, that could cause a whole new slew of issues, right? Because if the economy is contracting, but more people are trying to do gig work, they're going to hurt too. I mean, it could have a real downstream effect, could it not?
It's right. Well, so what happens with this gig work is when people tighten their belts, when consumers tighten spending, so they're not going to go, well, I'm not going to do DoorDash. I'm going to go pick it up myself, or we're going to eat in tonight. And so there are certain elements, that's exactly right, of the gig economy that could contract. Remember, this kind of stuff's been going hot since the pandemic when everybody's lifestyle changed. But keep in mind, you're paying a premium to have your food delivered. So at some point people go, well, I don't know if I can afford that. And so that could hurt. Now, where the gig economy could stay strong, not in the delivery, DoorDash, those will contract. But you'll still see contract work. So think white-collar work. So if you've got a skill set right now and you're listening, and whether you can program or code or you can do marketing or sales, I think a lot of those folks could do okay because what you'll see is companies, instead of a full-time employee with benefits and such, they can do contractors, which does save on the bottom line. So I think that kind of work could do okay.
Ken Coleman, Ramsey personality on KCMO. I'll leave you with this, Ken. You were ahead of the curve there talking about how work from home was not something that was going to be a long-term solution for most businesses. And now we have this report, September 2023 report, research from Calendar Labs that shows over 25% of work from home employees are romping on the job, meaning they are using work hours to get a little exercise away from the at-home office. Is that good or bad, Ken Coleman? You were ahead of the curve on this.
Yeah, well, it's bad for productivity, but it's certainly good for the mental health, shall we say, people. Interestingly enough, we're seeing daytime tea times, Monday through Friday tea times skyrocket.
Yeah.
I mean, this is out of sight, out of mind. It leads to nannyship, where companies are trying to monitor us. Overall, I think that's why it's just a really negative it's a negative factor for work in general. But yeah, people are out playing hooky, and who knows what else they're doing on the company dime.
Yeah, yep. New meaning to the word and phrase hump day. That's for darn sure. He is Ken Coleman doing great work. Ken Coleman Show, find it.
Question for you.
Yes.
I got to ask you this. Is Kelsey better with Swift or better without Swift? People want to know in Kansas City.
People want to know. Well, you guys in Nashville want to know because you forgot what an NFL team looks like. Jeez, the Titans are stinking up the joint. I think that whole thing is overblown. Here's the thing. Travis Kelce, Ken, you're a football fan. The guy was a Hall of Famer before he met Taylor Swift. So
I agree.
Now this whole, is he better without Taylor? Here's the problem for the Chiefs. They don't have a number 2 wide receiver. So they're doubling Kelce. And they're basically saying, all right, Mahomes, beat us with somebody else. And they don't believe anybody else in the wide receiver core can beat him. And I don't blame them for feeling that way. So I think this whole, is it Taylor's fault? Is he better with Taylor at the games? It's all nonsense, Ken. But I know you're going to be rooting for us tonight against the Eagles. Is that right?
Well, 100%, and you'll love this. My 14-year-old daughter popped into the house about a week and a half ago with a Kelsey T-shirt on, jersey. She goes, Dad, do you know who this guy is? Oh, the world's coming to an end. It hit me. It's finally hit me in suburban Nashville. Yes, honey, I know who he is. Oh, my gosh.
Well, there's a lot of people in Kansas City who are trying to get that same T-shirt for their daughter this Christmas, and now they can't get it because Ken Coleman's daughter bought the last one. So go figure.
Exactly right. I think he should dump Taylor, by the way. That's a controversial take.
Ooh.
But that's what I think.
Hey, we'll have to do that in 2 weeks, and we'll see how this game plays out tonight. You might have a point. Go there,
Chiefs,
Ken Coleman.
Go
I love
Chiefs.
it.
Go Chiefs.
All right, Ken. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks, my man. Keep up the great work.
All right, buddy. All right, man.
Ken Coleman on KCMO. Ramsey personality, 2-time best-selling author.